Welcome to Rogue Bogues. Little bonus episode here. We've got an interview pro. We've been waiting to get this guy on for a little while. He's always fun to talk with. Pro, what's going on?
Bogues, what are you up to, brother?
Oh, just preparing for this guy, man. He's a big name. He's a good friend of mine. Played with him many years. So without further ado, Jock Landale, welcome to Rogue Bogues.
Cheers, fellas. Thanks for having me.
How nervous are you right now?
You know what? If you hadn't have sent me the text the other day saying that we were going to keep it pretty PG, then I would have been a little bit nervous. But because of the message, I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Pro doesn't read those anyway, so yeah, you probably should be a little nervous from his end.
After having dinner with him the other night, as anything's possible. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, you guys are besties now, right,
yeah.
Bro?
Oh, no question.
Absolutely.
No question. Yeah.
Yeah, well, for those that aren't familiar, Jock Landale currently a San Antonio Spur and playing with the Austin Spurs for a couple of games, hopefully only just a couple. But probably the biggest thing is Jock Landale was officially my coffee bitch with the national team. So we just got to let the listeners know that Jock and I had a great relationship. Jock would always make sure that he got the veterans our coffees, except for that one day, Jock, that you made a little boo-boo.
Yep. You said you wanted a lukewarm coffee and I did the job and then you kicked up a stink about it. So I don't really know where.
Lukewarm coffee? No, I never use those words. No, Jock got cheeky. So what he would do was he'd go down to the coffee shop. He'd do all the orders at once, sit down and have his coffee 30 minutes before the bus, then bring all the coffees on with the boys. And you know, Bogues noticed that I drank it. It was basically like an iced coffee. So we had a little bit of back and forth. Jock got a little emotional and so did I. And it was, nothing too serious. But anyway, Jock, I didn't realize you're not the most famous thing from Denny from Deniliquin.
Yeah, the Ute Muster is.
The Ute Muster is. It's in my notes. So I had no idea, Jock.
What do you mean you had no idea? I feel like that's the only thing I ever tell you about is how good the Denny Ute Muster is.
Well, I ignored most of what you said besides when we had our coffee conversations, if I have to be honest. But no, I mean, geez, I thought you were the bee's knees of Deniliquin, but obviously not. For those that aren't familiar, the Ute Muster is the largest event of its kind in the world, standalone event, which began as a celebration of all things Australian, starting with the Aussie icon of the Ute, and then it's gone into, I guess, music festivals, circle work, bull riding, basically a country western type atmosphere, Jock. Is that right?
Mate, there's plenty more than just that. There's a lot of alcohol consumed. There's anything flies at that little festival. So it is a wild time. And I would say that my family would attest to the fact that it's a once in a lifetime experience. Everyone should go and do at some point in their life. But on top of that, I would say that, you know, even before me on the list, I would put my grandfather above me as one of the better known things to come out of Denny. I think he did a lot for that little town, and a lot of people would probably know him before they knew about me.
Really?
Yeah, mate.
Break that down for us. So just big name in town and
pretty much. The list goes on, but he pretty much he was a big part of making Denny into what it is today. And they've got one of the wings at the local Navarino, which is, you know, it's a care home for the elderly, you know, named after him. And he was a big part of the city council and helping with all of the farmers and you know, turning it into what it is in the rice industry today and all of that. So yeah, he had a big influence on the town itself.
So more useful stuff than basketball is what you're saying.
Pretty much.
I'm sure you'll get a statue one day. And just to finish off this Ute Muster, I now understand why you rock the blue wife beater, the blue singlet, because Deniliquin apparently set a Guinness World Record for the most people wearing blue singlets in one spot in 2010, and that stands at 3,500 people. Jock, were you there, part of that?
I did not know about that, mate. I did not know about that. But my old man might have very well been there. I wouldn't put that past him.
And your old lady too, probably.
Probably. She. I have seen photos of mum wearing a wife beater before, so I wouldn't put anything past those two. They're nuts.
No, good stuff. And take us through, I guess, your childhood real quick, just so we can circle that off. How long did you spend in Denny? Because I know at some point your family had a pad out in Melbourne, and you obviously went to Geelong Grammar, which is a boarding school for those not familiar. So, but how long did you spend there until you actually kind of made the move more towards Melbourne and Geelong Grammar?
We always kind of home based out of Melbourne because Dad decided to leave the farm life behind him for a bit for whatever reason, and he went and kicked up a career in stockbroking with Merrill Lynch and kind of worked his way up from the bottom, and that's a story in itself. But most of our holidays and spare time were spent back there because our family just had such a strong tie to the country. So every opportunity we got, we were heading back there as a family. You know, we get four sets of holidays throughout the year, and and we were always up there whenever we could. You know, we didn't really have a permanent place of residence there, but the homestead and the family house, I suppose, what mum and dad have made into their own these days, was always kind of open to the siblings. And yeah, I mean, we were up there. We had our own little bedrooms and stuff within that big homestead, which is, you know, now, 180 years old or something like that. So we were always kind of getting up there as much as we could. Dad had a great relationship with his mum and dad, and you know, we were always up there just trying to make the most of our time with Hunter, my grandfather, and Peg, my grandmother. So every chance we got, man, it unfortunately, I can't call it home as such, because, you know, I spent probably a bit more time in Melbourne than I did in Denny, but it always felt like home, just because that was our happy place and still is to this day. And now mum and dad have been living out there full time for, you know, probably 10 years. So dad kind of sold out of his business in Melbourne and bought the farm out from the rest of the siblings after Hunter passed. It was kind of, you know, split up, and dad decided that's where his real passion was, and, you know, used the funds he sold, his funding from his company to take over the farm for good, and you know, the rest is kind of history. So they're up there full time. You know, at the start of COVID, I was there for probably 4 or 5 months, you know, really just getting back in touch with that part of the world, because I hadn't been there in so long. But yeah, you know, a lot of time was spent kind of back and forth between Melbourne and there early on. And then, you know, obviously when boarding school kind of kicked up, it was tough to get back there, more so than usual, because our family was kind of stuck in Melbourne for whatever reason. And you know, there was a bit of stuff going on up on the farm, which, you know, we couldn't really get up there as much. So yeah, it's a long story, but, you know, that is home in my heart, and I miss it a lot.
Are you trained in living off the land? If it was just you by yourself, you're milking the cows, you're getting out in the fields?
Well, we're not a dairy farm, Bogues, so you need to get that one. We need to scratch that one. If my dad called me saying we were a dairy farm.
Your own milk, your own Wagyu beef?
Nah, Dad, we do eat some of our own meat occasionally, but for the most part, you know, all of our stuff is on contract, so you don't really get a whole lot of leeway in terms of what you can take home yourself, because you really are worked to the bone as a farmer. So, but yeah, you know, I do enjoy getting back there, but unfortunately, I will admit that I don't do a whole lot of work when I'm back there these days.
Besides ruin boats.
This guy is Joe fucking Dirt. I mean, I thought I was joking around when I called him Joe fucking Dirt. He is truly... Joe Dirt could be loosely fucking based on his life, just so you know. But
potentially.
I digress.
The mullet with the mullet.
I digress.
The Mohawk mullet.
Yeah.
Junior basketball, Jock. I read that you gave up the game mid-high school, right? And then took it back up. Take us through that. Were you always kind of in the mindset of... You played a bit of footy too, right? Were you in the mindset of always being a professional athlete, professional basketballer, kind of just go with the flow? Take us through that whole journey of how you got to, you know, obviously trending towards what you are now.
Yeah, well, I never really had it in mind that basketball was my thing. You know, I grew up just wanting to be a regular kid, you know, was pretty overweight and all that, as you know, and basketball was never really a passion for me. I actually used to hate getting up to go and work out and play basketball, and I would enjoy, you know, playing football more, even, you know, doing squad swimming for a little while, tennis. You know, I was kind of diving into every sport and just being a regular kid, just trying to, you know, hang out with his mates and have a good time. And basketball was never really at the front of my mind. And I was trying to quit for years, but my parents were always trying to throw me in there and keep me active. And for whatever reason, it wasn't even like a plan of theirs that this would kind of happen. It was just, you know, the way things were going. So, you know, I did some stuff with Simon Giovanoni, who's, you know, still to this day a good friend of mine and my trainer when I go home. But we kind of did like little workouts off the side of things for years, and I played domestic basketball, and, you know, I played at Waverley for a year or two, and similar to you, they told me I'd never make it and kicked me off the team, and that's kind of where I quit. So I ended up quitting after I was cut from their squad. I don't even know what that was, maybe year 5 or year 6. My parents were still keen to kind of keep me in it for whatever reason, and ended up going to boarding school in year 7, where the boarding school, Geelong Grammar, said that I couldn't actually play. They didn't have a high school team. They weren't keen on me going off campus to play with the Geelong team, and so we kind of just took the opportunity to take a break from it. And I was, at that point, that's where I really just started playing a lot of footy and swimming and doing tennis, and even was a record holder in shot put. So that was, you know, that's a bit of a claim to fame there in itself. But yeah, you know, basketball just was never at the forefront of, you know, my passion or mine, and then kind of brings on, you know, the whole timber top scenario where we go away for a year and you know, we camp out in the woods and live in cabins with 12 other blokes, and you know, we do a couple days of school here and there, but for the most part it's kind of a bit of a boot camp, and you know, we're up in the mountains, you know, hiking our way up to 6 days, and you know, it was probably about 120 Ks over 6 days or thereabouts, I think, is one of the big ones. And then we were doing a half marathon up and down a mountain. So that's kind of what you build your way up to. And that's more to the point of what the purpose of the curriculum is to kind of help you distance yourself from your family and not be so coddled. And you know, it was an enjoyable year, but that in itself is an experience that really brought out the best in me and brought on my passion for physical activity and just, you know, kind of being in a team setting and a team environment. We have roles of jobs, and you got to cut your own firewood to heat up the water in the morning, and you know, you got to clean the whole place from head to toe. And I mean, it's a full on experience, and it definitely brought out the best in me. So, you know, when third term came around, and at that point we're only running once or twice a week, and we're kind of skiing up on the mountains. I had an incident where I fell over on like the last day and the last hour of our last skiing day for the year, and I actually snapped my wrist really badly, where it was almost coming out of the skin. My arm was all mangled and whatnot. So, you know, I went home and I had to spend, I think it was about 8 weeks or 9 weeks away from the program up in the mountains just to kind of have surgery on my wrist. And we had surgery, and we were looking, there are growth plates in your wrist, which are usually the first ones in your body to close. And we were looking at these growth plates, and the doctors were like, mate, like, you're already 6 foot and you're 15 years old or whatever I was, but like, your growth plates are wide open, like you haven't even hit puberty yet, which at that point I probably hadn't really. So they were like, you're going to be a monster. You might grow to be 7'2" or something like that. And at that point, before that point, we thought I was going to be, you know, 6'4" or whatever they tell you when you're a kid. So to hear that, it was like, you know, I love physical activity. I love all these, you know, different things about being in a team environment. Like, what can I do with this height? And, you know, footy was one of the first things that came to mind, but I'd kind of drifted away from it and wasn't really too much of a fan. And basketball had been something at Timbertop that I was doing up on a little dirt court, I'd probably say, just shooting hoops out the back of our cabin. And I was like, damn, I'm starting to really love this. So at that point, you know, when I was at home for those, you know, 6 to 9 weeks, we were like, you know, maybe we give this a crack. So we reached out to a good friend of mine, Rod Boone, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. And he was like, mate, come down and have a crack at the 18-1s. So, you know, at 15 years old, I was thrown into the 18-1s, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, nice long story. Just that Geelong Grammar, that was year 9 where you went away, or year 10?
Year 9.
Yeah, and I love that story, Pro. So I don't know if you're familiar, but the grammar school, they go away for the whole year, man, and they spend it. I actually know the spot. I looked at a property down that way many years ago and spoke to Jock about it, funnily enough, and he's like, yeah, that was where I was for a year. But
oh, shit.
Yeah, no phones too, right?
No phones.
No phone calls in the first term, and then you got one in the second term. You could phone home, but no mobiles. Were you cooking some of your own food?
No phones, no computers, maybe, or maybe we had computers, but they weren't like linked up to the internet, so they were only for typing on Word documents and stuff. So we couldn't communicate back home unless we wrote a letter and posted it. So it was like, I mean, my mum loves chatting every 5 minutes, so she would write 6 letters, and by the time I get these 6 letters, I've written 1 and sent it back. So it's like the way of communicating was actually really hard, because you had to kind of pair up and wait for these like 4-page written letters, like handwritten letters. It was insane. So they really like cut you off from the rest of the world, to the point where we had kids who couldn't cope with it, and they were trying to run away and catch buses from, you know, the local town Mansfield. So they would run into town, which is like 60 or 70 kilometers or something like that, just to catch a bus to go back to Melbourne, because they couldn't cope with it. But it is hands down one of the most life-changing and probably defining years of my life, I would say, which is probably a little bit extreme, but like, honestly, I don't think I would be here without learning as much as I did about myself that year as, you know, any other year. So it is full on. I mean, you know, just like cutting down, you know, getting these, the campus delivers logs of wood and you have 12 guys in a unit, a cabin unit, whatever you want to call it, and one of those guys has to saw wood all week just so the next guy on the job list can put that wood in a boiler at 3 a.m. so that the rest of the unit can have hot showers. And it's everything is just pulled right back down to like basic level stuff. And that's how we lived for a year. And, if one guy didn't pull his weight, the whole thing crumbled. So by the end of the year, you're kind of all doing your job really well. But at the beginning, it's brutal, man. The experiences we had out there were crazy. You're hiking however many kilometers it is in a day. Like the first term, you're running 3 times a week and you're running 2 times a week and you're hiking on the weekends. And then by the second term, you're running 3 times a week and you're not hiking because it starts to get a little bit cold. You're kind of doing community service at that point, which is pretty fun because you get shipped out to other people's properties to help on their farms. And sometimes, the school probably won't love me saying this on a podcast, but like we would sneak into the house whilst the people would go and jump on the phone to call back home. So that would happen. Like you hear stories of that once or twice. And then in the third term, you're running 3 times a week and you're skiing on your weekends or doing kind of hobbies is what they call them. So I learned to fly fish up there. That was the hobby that I selected, and we would learn to fly fish in the third term. And then in the fourth term, you're back to running twice a week. But those runs, you have a short run and a long run. The short runs are probably 8 kilometers and the long runs work their way up to about 28 kilometers. So, the shortest one you do that term is probably 16 to 18 kilometers, and the rest are all like mammoths of runs, and like you just got to back it up another 2 days later and do a short 8-kilometer run. So it's no joke, man, but people really do come out better from it. And even my girlfriend, she would attest to that. As much as she probably didn't love the year, it is life-changing, and people really do come out for the better.
Yeah, it builds a lot of resilience. I think that's the most important thing at that age. What about the nudie runs, mate? You didn't mention those.
If you want to dive into that, we can. But yeah, there were a few nudie runs.
I don't need to dive into it, but yeah, I remember you mentioned that you guys used to run like 10 kilometers to Merrijig. Was it the town?
Yeah, the Merrijig pub run. Pub? I never did the Merrijig pub run, but I know of plenty of people who did, and the ones that got caught were a bit worse for wear. So there were plenty of nudie runs.
I said some bullshit, Bogues, to be honest with you.
Man,
I said some bullshit with them.
Do you want me to call my friends onto the Zoom meeting right now? They're probably all half cut at a pub, but they'd love to tell some stories.
Yeah. And I stopped at 2 fucking slices of pizza last night too. You want another fucking story? Come on. Give me a fucking break, buddy, would you?
Pro's a little jealous he can't do the nudie runs. I think that's probably more the problem. But take us through the recruiting process at St. Mary's. How many schools did you have recruiting you? Were they kind of the be-all and end-all, or was that the only one? Take us through that whole process.
Yeah, St. Mary's was the only real one. I had your mate, Kerry Rupp. You worked with him?
Yeah, he was an assistant to Rick Majerus, and then when Majerus got fired, he was my head coach for like half a season, and then he left after that. But yeah, good fella.
Yeah, so he, his whole sales pitch was to me was I coached Andrew Bogut, so.
It didn't sell you? Fuck.
No, he didn't end up selling me. But so he was kind of the first guy to get out in contact, like really get in contact. After I did,
was that Louisiana Tech?
No, he was at Montana at that point.
Oh, Montana,
but he ended up leaving that year that he was recruiting me to somewhere else. I forget where, but
Oregon, I think, Oregon State. Yeah.
So your basketball academy that I paid good money for, and I think I deserve a bit of a, kickback at some point, was where he kind of laid eyes on me for the first time. So from that, he kind of got out and he got in contact a little bit and expressed interest from Montana. Now, the interest never seemed like very serious. That he had some good chats with us and he came out and he watched me do a workout and all of that jazz. But it was never really like a full on, we want you here and this, that, we want to bring you out on an official visit and blah, blah, blah. There was none of that. I think there was chat of a non-official visit where I had to pay my way to go out to college or whatever it is.
Fuck that.
We were just like, nah, no chance. So then, fast forward a couple of weeks later, and at that point I'd participated in an Australia camp, and someone must have seen me there and kind of put in the good word to St. Mary's. But Dane Pinot, who I became good friends with, and Emmett Nah, they went to St. Mary's for a year, and those boys, a year after that Australia experience, came to Australia. Oh no, it was only a couple months later, sorry. They came to Australia on to play Dandenong Rangers or something like that out at Dandenong. So I actually was walking across the court to say good day to Dane, and the coaches apparently had a conversation. They're like, who the fuck is that tall prick over there? And that's the first time St. Mary's ever laid eyes on me, and pretty much like did a bit of research at that point. I had like a few, you know, mixtapes out or whatever you want to call them from like my days with the Geelong Supercats, but I hadn't really had a whole lot of exposure to the college scene other than
whoever made you the fucking highlight tapes. You need your money back because you got recruited by those fucking bums.
Hey man, I love St. Mary's. What you talking about?
Sure.
So them seeing me walk across the court for the first time is kind of where like it all kicked up. So they ended up flying back to America, and 2 weeks later sent Adam Caporn back out, who like messaged me. They were recruiting another bloke at that time, I think, and they messaged me and they were like, hey, we're in town. We might pop down to Geelong to, you know, just put eyes on you and see what you like. And I was like, mate, we're out of season in representative basketball, so I have nothing for you except for like maybe an individual workout. And they asked if we had a high school team, and I said no. But at that point in time, me and my mates had kind of taken to doing a bit of just like, you know, we would just play like an open gym kind of thing. But my friends are like 5'3" at this point. Like they are fucking tiny and they have no basketball experience. So St. Mary's flew a coach out to watch me play against a bunch of football players who I was just playing open gym with as a bit of a, like, you know, we were just mates having a bit of fun. So that's what they recruited me off to. And as the story goes, Capes called back to Coach Bennett and was like, hey, like, I've just seen him playing. He looks like, you know, fucking LeBron James, but he's also playing against a bunch of 5-foot kids and he's 6'11", and that's kind of all I've got to go off. So they were like, all right, we'll fly him out to St. Mary's and take a look at him, you know, in our preseason when he's like scrimmaging with the boys. So not a week later, I'm on a flight to St. Mary's. So this is all like a 3-week process. I'm at St. Mary's. I'm doing a workout. I'm fat as anything. I'm almost as fat as Pro, and I'm doing this workout in front of St. Mary's. And these guys,
that's rough.
Hey man, you give it to yourself just as good. I'm just jumping on the bandwagon here.
Good point.
And
good point.
I was like exhausted in this workout. I was hardly able to get past half court every offensive possession, and they offered me a scholarship on the spot, and that's kind of how it went.
So the moral of the story is, if you want to be recruited by some colleges out there, kids, just get a open scrimmage or videotape yourself playing against some shorter friends of yours, and you might get you might get someone looking at you. But
there you go.
Your college career was very impressive. It kind of, for the most part, I don't know if you'd agree, but it went kind of somewhat unnoticed for the most part. Obviously, your senior year, you blew up, but I mean, 13.2 points, 6.7 rebounds over your career. Senior year, 21 and 10 a night. I think you gained some steam in the tournament, had a really good tournament. But yeah, do you feel like you probably peaked so late in your college? Not peaked, but media-wise peaked. Like people didn't really know too much about you, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, who's this kid? Like, where has he come from? But you were kind of there the whole time, like playing pretty well, you know?
For sure. You know, my freshman year, I really made some like good strides as a freshman, and the college gained some. They were excited about the fact that I was with them, and they saw a good future in me. And I don't think we ever thought it was going to be what it was, but like they thought that, you know, at the end of my freshman year, they were like, hey, like we really want to give you the keys to the castle in your second year, and you kind of take it forward from there for the next 3. And I took that as life's good. You know, my career's sorted. I'll be fine. And I took my foot off the gas entirely that off season and like blew out. I came back out of shape, which kind of set me up for what my sophomore year was, you know, I was in the starting lineup in those practices leading up to season. And then they were like, this kid can't be out on the floor for more than 3 minutes at a time because he's so out of shape. So they gave the spot back to Dane, and that's why my minutes were only, you know, 15 a game in my sophomore year. And that's where at the end of that year, I had a conversation with 2 of my good mates from college, and they were like, man, you just need to get yourself in shape and you'll be fine, because throughout that sophomore year, I kind of had flashes of excellence, but it was never really like consistent just because I couldn't be out on the floor for more than 2 or 3 minutes at a time. So once I kind of got past that and flipped the switch on, hey, you know, my body and my diet is really important for, you know, to make sure that this, you know, will stick, and that I realized that I actually had a chance. So once I kind of made that transition mentally and got myself in shape for my junior year, I'd say that's where it really kind of started taking off, and you know, led that team or helped that team get to the NCAA tournament. And, you know, that I would say after my junior year, I actually considered taking a stab at the draft. And I think that draft class was pretty weak. I can't remember off the top of my head, but, you know, I had some conversations with some agents and even my coaching staff, and they said it's not a bad option. But at that time I was I was a bit banged up with a bad knee, and ended up coming back for my 4th year, which was a great decision. And you know, yeah, that's how it went.
Yeah, I guess the story is great in the sense of for parents that listen to the podcast and kids, even, you know, your freshman year, you know, 2.1 points a game, not even a full rebound, 0.9, barely played any minutes. The perseverance and your improvement throughout your career is something that we don't see these days with a lot of kids. It's like, Pro and I talk about it all the time. It's like, oh, I've had a bad year, or coach is screwing me, or it's not fair. I'm just going to transfer, or I'm going to ask for a trade, or I'm going to sign somewhere else. When, you know, you, like you just mentioned, after your sophomore year, you identified what the problem was, right? It was you.
Yeah.
And I even spoke to some people that, you know, some coaches that were on that team and some of your teammates, and they all said the same thing. Like, Jock he is or he will be the best player on the team, but he's got to get in shape. And so much so they were shit scared of you going home for the off season.
Yeah.
That's one thing that they stuck out, especially after that sophomore year. They were like, I'm not sure if you went home that off season, but I remember they were just saying we were so against him going home even for 2 weeks because we were so scared about all the hard work that he put in to get to shape that we're like, shit, he's going to come back as a beach ball again.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sophomore year I went home for, at the end of my freshman year, I went home for 8 weeks or something like that. And that was disastrous. But after that, so at the end of my sophomore and then the end of my junior, you know, I had conversations with Marty and with RB, and it was like, mate, just like make sure you don't do anything crazy when you go home, and all that kind of stuff. And so I was only going home for like a week and a half, I think, both those years, because I was also like not trusting of myself at that point. Like I just started getting off the train of, you know, being fat and out of shape and all that stuff. So like I wanted to just make sure I was around an environment I knew I was going to be kind of safe in and you know, wouldn't let myself loose, and I had people there holding me accountable. So yeah, I didn't go. I hardly went home for those last 2 or 3 years because I was just scared that the same thing would happen. And I would just, when I get around my mates, man, sometimes I just have no self-control. So I blame them for that. But
yeah. But it's at least you identified it. That's my point with all this. It's like if you can identify your weaknesses, and Pro, I'm sure you would agree, you can identify your weaknesses. It's much better than a coach having to prod you or someone else.
And I would say that like it goes a step further. Like even like after my senior year, where I was an All-American and having a great year, and I went to Summer League and stank that up, I could have easily just rolled over and just been like, oh, bugger it. Like I'll give up on my dream to play in the NBA and you know, I'll just do whatever I could have done to maybe go and just have an easy career sitting at the end of a bench in the NBL or something like that. And like not really just being that ambitious, but I think because of my, you know, ambitious nature, I decided to go to a hard place to play and play at Partizan. And you know, and again, like I felt like I was back to freshman year where I had to, you know, come off the bench for those first 10 to 15 games a season playing 5-10 minutes a game, and I had to work myself up in that system. And then it was to Zalgiris, and then it, you know, so it's constantly just been a career of having to, you know, not have stuff spoon fed to you, and I've really had to go out there and try and make the best of every situation to get to where I want it to be.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it in some cases, though, you know, because like you learn how to sort of get into a situation, earn your spot, you know, really earn your playing time, and going through those struggles, I think, are really important. Like your weight struggles, like, you know, when you could overcome that, and then you could overcome going into these situations, not playing a lot at first, and then have to earn it. I think it really sets you up for the rest of your career versus going on another level where like maybe you weren't ready, but they threw you in there and you did okay. And you had that false sense of, yeah, I don't really need to work. I'm good. And I'd rather come the other way because it really gets you ready for adversity, you know, and I think that sort of builds up your career pretty well. How'd you feel about it, though, going through that sort of deal in Partizan? How did you feel having to earn those minutes and things?
Well, I think that we spoke about it a little bit the other night. Like everyone wants to be Andrew Bogut, who gets to be number one draft pick and have some sense of security. I don't know if that's really what it would be like being a number one draft pick, Bogues. So, you know, don't take my word for it, but like everyone wants to have that sense of security where you wake up and you're like, no, you know what, like I'm good. Like, but never having that was really hard, because even in those early days at Partizan, I was like, I could get fired tomorrow because I'm not really becoming what they want me to, or I was always questioning whether or not I was really becoming that. And or like living up to their expectations. So not having any sense of security throughout my career. I would say at Melbourne there was a little bit of security, but even still I had my brain's kind of tricked itself into always thinking that there's going to be someone coming for my minutes or something like that, which there always will be, in fairness. Like, I don't think that anyone's career is really ever safe where they can just take their foot off the gas. But even in Melbourne, I was like, Joe might come for my minutes. Like, he was kicking my ass early on in that whole thing. So, that year at Partizan was, that was probably one of the toughest years of my life to date. I really, really struggled through that year a lot mentally. And
did you have a passport or you were import?
I was an import, yeah.
Yeah, that's even worse. Yes, to your point, imports, for those not familiar, you're an import in Europe. You're generally expected to be the top scorer. You're generally expected to be. They don't give a shit about your development. They're not like, oh yeah, well we know Jock's young. First year out of college, you're like, no, you're a fucking import. You better give us bang for buck.
And especially at Partizan, where like the emphasis is on winning and nothing but winning, which is again shaped, my mentality today is you got to win at all costs. Like, there's none of that 3-year plan that the NBA guys have with young prospects. It's all about winning then and there, and they won't accept anything less. So I really enjoy that way of basketball because you're getting everyone's best every night. But it is cutthroat and it's extremely hard to survive out there. You see guys time and time again. I think there was a statistic that came out that most pro players in Europe from, overseas, their careers last 3 or 2.5 or 3 years or something like that. And then they retire because they just can't cope with the stress of it all and having so much expectations from fans, from yourself, your family, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is really hard, but it's it's helped me become and get to where I am now.
Yeah, you chose a hell of a spot to go to, by the way, in your rookie pro year. Partizan, really, really tough place to play. Crazy fans, great atmosphere. But talk us through when you left Partizan and the shit that you had to deal with, because these are the stories that I've heard from a lot of people playing in Europe. Daniel Kickett, for one, he got stuck trying to get out of Ukraine, I believe, when the bombings happened, and just got on a flight in time before basically the airport got bombed. That's one example. But even there's fans and whatnot. But you had your own example once you basically were announced not coming back, right?
Yeah. So I was dealing with an injury at the time, and the club was pretty much telling me that I was fine, but I couldn't walk on my left ankle. Like, I couldn't walk. And they were like, no, you're fine. Yeah. Like, the x-rays are clear. And I was like, yeah, I know the x-rays are clear, mate, but that's not my bone that I'm worried about. It's the monstrously large pocket of swelling that's sticking out at the side of my foot that's stressing me out. And they were like, you're fine, just play. Like, just get out there and play because we need you. And at that point, I was really like helping the team win and whatnot. So they were desperate to get me out there. So I had to put my foot down, and sometimes in those instances you do. Those clubs out there, as much as I love my experience, and I know the fans will listen to this and, they'll get angry at me for saying what I'm going to say, but I love my time there. But there was it didn't feel like anyone really cared about my ankle. So, at the time I was chatting to my agent, and I was my previous agency, and I was like, you guys got to get me out of here, man. Like, my ankle's fucked, and they're trying to make me play through an extreme amount of pain. I can't even walk, let alone run. So as it goes, we kind of had, a contract with Zalgiris agreed on, and we were excited about that, getting to step up into EuroLeague, which is tough to do. There's not many players that really get up into EuroLeague on a year-to-year basis. So that situation was kind of looking good at the time. And at that point, I'm trying to remember what happened. At that point, I started getting messages about a leak of a rumor or something like that, and how the fans were just blowing my phone up about how much they hated me because I was going to leave them. And, they're trying to get back to EuroLeague, and, they saw me as being a big part of that at the time. And so I kind of get it, but, some of the messages I was getting were pretty horrendous. So at that point in time, we kind of got it to a verbal agreement with my agency and the club that, I could fly direct back to I think in Milwaukee. Milwaukee I'd just signed with the Summer League. So they were like, you can go to Milwaukee, you can get your ankle right, and then come back whenever it feels right, because the facilities and stuff weren't getting the job done there, if it feels right. And anyway, so I'm about to jump on this flight out of the country. I'd had my bags packed for weeks, and my agency at the time calls me and they're like, hey, we want to just send you to Zalgiris, even though we have no contract signed, just to get the medical done and all sorted. And I was like, all right, like, you guys are the pros. I trust you. Let's do it. So I jump on this flight to go to Lithuania, and I touch down in Warsaw, Poland, and my phone is blowing up like I've never seen it before. Like, there must have been 1,000 messages or something like that. I have no idea how many there were, but it was going bananas. So I'm like, what the hell's happened? Anyway, I guess the PR team at Zalgiris had somehow caught wind that I was coming to town, and they thought that I'd signed. So they put out an Instagram post saying that I'd signed there, and at that point Partizan had only made a verbal agreement, and they weren't sure that I was actually going to sign with Zalgiris at that time. It was kind of all still in discussion that I might go back to Partizan, but the verbal agreement was for me to go to the US to rehab my ankle. So the story goes on. There's a big dispute in how I've fucked them, essentially, the club, and that all these clauses were put in my contract. My buyout went through the roof so that I could get away from Partizan, because I'd essentially left, towards the end of the season, but my contract hadn't actually permitted me to leave at that point in time. And that's kind of where all my contract issues began, is, because I went to Zalgiris when I was meant to be going back to the US, and that was all meant to be some secret operation. And obviously, as soon as I take off, it blows up. And at that point, I was just fucking hated by everyone. That's kind of how it went.
And then you got to Lithuania and couldn't play for a while, right?
No. Well, I got to Lithuania and I did my medical and went back to the US and played summer league. And there was no issue with actually getting on court in Lithuania.
Okay, yeah. And then you started on that following season.
Yeah.
With Zalgiris. One thing in all of this, with the way your game is, I noticed that. Talk us through. You weren't a 3-point shooter at all in college. So much so that I looked up your career numbers. You attempted 0.2. Was that? Did you feel like you would shoot it in college and it just wasn't part of the system? Because now you're an elite 3-point shooter for each set. Happy to get them up as well, and you have a beautiful shot and whatever. But yeah, in college, it never looked like you would be that. So was that something that you worked on in the transition as a pro going over to Europe, or was it something you felt like you had, but just in St. Mary's system, you were 21-10 your senior night without needing a 3?
Yeah, that's probably a better question for Marty, actually. Marty was the one who I was kind of working with at the time. I would say that I always had the confidence that I could shoot it a little bit, and it might have been irrational at that point in time, but, I did shoot some face-up jumpers at a pretty good clip. We never stretched it out as far as a 3-point line, but a lot of St. Mary's stuff was repetition. So no matter who you were, whether or not you could shoot, like, even Dane Pinot was out there practicing 3-pointers every day at St. Mary's, and his 3-point shooting percentage must be in the teens, I would say. But
ouch, Dane, take that.
Dane, take that. I know you'll love that as well. But like, we practiced 3-pointers every single day, regardless of who you were. So I would say that I always kind of, irrational or not, had an inkling that I could shoot it a little bit. I felt like I had to refine my shot a lot, and there was a noticeable difference between my junior and senior year. And my senior year, I let a couple fly. Maybe it might have been 8 or 10.
3 for 10. 3 for 10.
There you go. At that point in time, our shooting, our offensive structure was so based around the Warriors, around your guys actually, and playing that split game out of the post, that we really didn't need me shooting any threes, and I was cool with it. I knew that I was going to have going to be able to score out of the post and facilitate. And at that point in time, my right hand jump hook was everything that I'd worked on. And for some reason, people kept letting me get to it, that I was like, screw it, I'll just keep doing that. I also had the likes of Emmett Nair and Joe Rayhan, who are great facilitators at our college, that, would always find me on rolls. And that's kind of the way the structure was. I respected Marty and Coach B enough to be able to put my own selfish needs, I put them at bay and just did what they asked. And I mean, it worked, man. We were pretty unbeatable back then.
Yeah, but then you get to Europe and even summer league straight after your college year, and you started hoisting them up. So was that just a mindset shift for you? Or did you put a lot of work in that season between your senior year finishing, and then was it a matter of, look, I need to I've got a kind of mindset now that I need to stretch my game out and make this an emphasis of something I need to get better at and more confident at that I can shoot at bulk? Or did it just naturally kind of progress?
Man, it was a multitude of things, to be honest with you. It was kind of an understanding that, I mean, honestly, when I came out of my senior year, there still wasn't like a big emphasis on stretch five. So my mindset was, all right, I'm going to have to transition to the 4 because I'm not going to be able to, bang with the 5s that are in the NBA or in Europe. And I'm going to have to kind of work my game out so that I can space the floor as a 4-man and try and work my way into a system like that. So that was kind of a conversation I had with a couple people, my old agents, Coach Bennett, all of those guys were kind of harping on about that. And that's kind of where it started. And then when I got to Serbia, I was working with Aca or Alexander Matovic, and we were doing a lot of work on threes. Like, he would keep me behind after a 3-hour practice in Serbia, and we would do another hour of repetition, form shooting, all of that stuff, just getting up as many threes as possible. So there was a game which I remember in Serbia against Red Star where my coach at the time, Andre Trinchieri, come up to me and he was like, hey, they've got this guy, Michael Ojo, rest in peace, who is going to sit in a deep drop and we need you to shoot a 3. And I was like, all right. So that's how we opened up the game. First possession, pick and pop. Nervous as hell because this is a derby against Red Star, which, as those European listeners or whoever might know,
brutal.
It's brutal. It is fucking crazy. It's the best sporting atmosphere in the world, or in my opinion. And I open that thing up and bang, first one goes down. We run the same play, whack. Second one goes down. We run the same play, whack. Third one goes down. So all of a sudden, I've hit 3 out of 3 of like my first 3-pointers of the year, and I just had like this monster hit of confidence, which kind of set me up for the rest. So then I really started spacing the floor and becoming a pick and pop 5, and it's done me justice.
Extra work in Serbia. There's no load management over there in Europe, Jock. There's no GPS and no recovery and all that shit. It's as long as it takes us.
Exactly right.
So you then go on to Zalgiris. You average 11 and 4 in EuroLeague, play pretty well there. I won't get too much into that. You had a great year. I believe you were looking to return to the EuroLeague, correct? At that point, I think you did Summer League the coronavirus year or leading into that, and then you were going to go back to Europe, but it kind of fell apart with COVID, right? And that's how
I came out of my Euro Cup going, the year of the World Cup was the last summer league I did with Milwaukee. And then we had the World Cup, and I had I had a few things kind of pop up. But then at that point, my contract was so jacked up that I had to go to Zalgiris, which was a great experience, learned a lot there. But yeah, at that point, that's when the NBA interest really started becoming real, through talks with, whoever it was at the time and my agent. That's when the NBA interest really started peaking. And then goes that year at Zalgiris in EuroLeague. And that's when COVID hit. And, we were kind of back and forth on whether the season was going to continue or not. So all these clauses in my contract I had for buyouts and stuff, whether it be to another EuroLeague team or to the NBA, they were so crazy because, you didn't know when the season was going to start. So I had all these dates that weren't really applicable because they went by 4 months before season started. So there were plenty of chats. I mean, there was a few Russian teams, 1 or 2 Spanish teams in EuroLeague who were kind of interested at the time. I think Maccabi was also chatting to us. There was a fair bit of interest. There was also some NBA interest, but, we just couldn't move on anything because my contract was... it was, you could interpret it in 2 different ways or 3 different ways or something like that. So we were still just trying to figure out if we could navigate that. And fortunately, Paulius at Zalgiris, the GM, he was phenomenal in how he handled that situation with my current agency, and we kind of amended a few of those dates and numbers and whatnot. And hats off to Zalgiris for being so top notch about it. But yeah, they were a big helping hand in all of that. And yeah, at the time there was a few things on the cards.
And then obviously you end up signing with Melbourne. Now I'm going to ask you a question.
Here we go. He's going to try and get something out of me about Melbourne here.
No, I'm going to try. No, you can be honest about it. So I'm going to let people know the Sydney Kings. I had the discussion with you.
Yes.
So I basically knew that I was done or retired at the time. So I was knocking on your door. I know Will Weaver was at the time. This is when Will Weaver was still the coach going into the off season.
Mm-hmm.
How close were you considering the Sydney Kings? Because I know once Will Weaver left, you crossed the Sydney Kings out, and then Melbourne eventuated. As much as I abused the shit out of you for signing there, it eventuated, which is fine. But how close would you have signed with the Sydney Kings if Will Weaver stayed on?
For sure. I wouldn't say that it was a done deal just because of your guys' financial situation, I would say, or not situation, but just what the money that was on the table. There was a big interest for me in making the NBA at that time, and that was a big selling point. So the Sydney Kings were definitely on the radar at that point. It was only between you guys and Melbourne. But in the end, the thing that really got me over the line was, being back, I knew it was only going to be or at the time I was like, this is only going to be a 1 year thing. So I might as well situate myself in Melbourne, knowing that if it's only for a year, I want to reconnect with my family and friends and just try and make the most of that side of things. So if it wasn't for that and that realization and Will leaving, I would say that Sydney probably would have happened.
Yeah, I didn't even, once Will left, I kind of didn't even bother following up because I kind of knew, we didn't even have a coach at that point. I'm like, I'm not going to, recruit Jock, not even knowing who our coach can be. And then, I pressure Jock and he signs with us, and then we get some coach, it doesn't work out. Then, I didn't want to do that to you from your career point of view. So I just kind of, if you remember, once Will left, I was like, oh, there goes that. Fuck. I was just texting you and giving you shit. Like, there was a bit of anyone but them. Yeah. Go to Southeast Melbourne. Anyone but them. And then he's like, Bogues, you're going to hate me, man. I signed with Melbourne. I'm like, fuck.
Because at that point, you were like, if you fucking sign with Melbourne, I'm never talking to you again. And I was like, oh, God, how am I going to tell this bloke? Like, oh, man. That was actually a nervous text I sent. I was like, fuck, he's going to rip my head off.
Nah, it was I just, we have a rivalry with Melbourne, and I historically, with what happened with myself, almost signing there. So, but it worked out for your career. I mean, you had a MVP caliber year. You were the finals MVP, 16 points, 8 a night. Probably could have had more, but you guys ran a real ball movement orientated offense. I feel like if you were on a team that probably wasn't as good as Melbourne, your numbers would have been much more inflated, which can, sometimes when you got, a lot of these NBL commentators just judging on numbers, it can be frustrating, which you were frustrated with at times. You were like, what the fuck are these guys on about? And I had to kind of say, hey man, you just got to let those people chirp and chirp. That's what they get paid to do.
The boiling point of all that was the NBL MVP candidates. Now, I'll say that I was pretty harsh in the media when I kind of came out to whoever it was and said what I said about it being a scoring title more so than an MVP title. But I feel as though the people who judge that have to take a hard look at the game, because there are a lot of other people around. Now, Sobes, Tyler Harvey, and Bryce Cotton were obviously having MVP caliber years as well, but their impact was tremendous. Like, body of it was on the scoring end, and I felt as though that's where I was a bit hard done by. Is going into that year, my whole mentality was let's win a championship, because I'd won a few in Europe, and I was so excited to come home and do it on home soil that we just pounded that mentality into everyone. Scotty Hobson could have easily tried to take over that team and done his thing like he had the year before, but guys like myself, Barlow, Chris, Mitch McCarron were all so huge on let's win a championship and give up our own success for the betterment of the group, that it worked out in our favor really, really nicely.
Yeah, but real basketball people know that's the thing. Like a lot of these NBL commentators that just pick up a stat sheet, not all of them, but there's a few, especially a few of them that yell and scream every time they're on TV.
Give us one name.
Oh, Kerry Williams, I mean, he literally picks up a stat sheet and says, Jock had 11 and 5. I need more. He's an MVP candidate. I need more. And you guys won by 30. And you're like, dude, like he played 15 minutes, or vice versa. Like a guy has 30 and 20 on a team that's not going to make the finals. That's the best player in the league. It's like, you got to know basketball. Like arguably, that's why I said, if you were on a worse team that was maybe middle of the pack, you would have been 20 and 10 minimum a night, right?
Yep.
But you got to give that up. Like you said, Scotty Hobson, he came off the bench, I believe, right? He was your sixth man, wasn't he?
Halfway through the season, yeah.
For stretches, yeah. So imagine a coach going to a guy, he was an MVP candidate the season before with New Zealand. He'd go on to that guy and saying, hey man, we're going to bring you off the bench. And I'm sure he was probably pissed for a day or two, but then you guys got on with it, won a championship. So it's that conversation.
Standing back and looking at Scotty's situation, I would say that he was struggling mentally more when he was in the starting group than when we were like, yo, come in as the second group leader and take over the game from there. Because after he got put in that second group, this man started scoring like 20 a night, not 20 a night, but he was having some massive outbursts of scoring just because we knew that, me and Chris are off the floor. It's your time to take over. And Joe did the same thing, like having Joe as the second, the second five man out there and playing some four as well. We knew that he could get a bucket like whenever he wanted to. So having them kind of come on together and taking over games with the likes of Shilly, who I rate so highly as a basketball player personally. Like those three was just like, holy shit. Like how
your bench was really good.
Crazy.
Yeah, your bench was really, really good. And then people forget Jack White in the starting lineup as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And then you got Barlow, who's a smart basketball mind, and he would kind of complement those guys really well by slowing things down and just making, smart basketball plays. So our bench was, I mean, if you can credit, honestly, in my opinion, if you could credit that championship to someone, it wouldn't be me, it wouldn't be Chris, it would be the bench group, man. They really got us through some games there.
I think they did, but I think to your point as well, without you in that starting lineup, I don't know if they win a championship. I think they replace you with just a role playing big. Even arguably Joe in the starting lineup, I think they're in for a battle. So to your point about winning games should definitely impact the MVP, but it's just so hard because it's judged on regular season. Then all of a sudden you guys are in the finals and you win the finals. You got rewarded with the finals MVP. So I guess it's half full stuff. But moving on from that,
let me ask you one thing real quick. Do you agree that I would say everywhere else other than Europe, individual stats are praised so much more than they should? Because when I first got to Europe and I sat down with our captain at the time, Novica Velikovic, and I was talking to him, we became really close and would go out for meals and whatever. And I would always say to him, like, man, like I have these ambitions to get to the NBA and blah, blah, blah. And he would be like, bro, like, fuck all the stats. Fuck all of the notoriety, all that shit. Just concentrate on winning. Winning takes care of absolutely everything. And I think that is a message that I live and die by now, but it's forgotten about in so many leagues around the world, except for those European leagues. Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm pro, but you probably agree as well. But I think definitely because that goes with commentary analysis, where some leagues, they just strictly look at numbers. And that's the tough part about the NBA is you get, if you're averaging 12 and 9, there's a big difference if you're then averaging 12 and 10 because your agent can write up a marketing spiel about you averaging a double-double. And that's one rebound, right? And then you wonder why players on the same team are fighting over a loose rebound and almost knocking each other out and it goes out of bounds.
Just crazy.
All that kind of shit. Guys going for, help side defense, just stupid block shot attempts to get their block shots per game up, but they miss the next 5 in a row and a guy gets an O-board dunk or whatever it is, right? So you're totally right, but that's the unfortunate reality of the NBA, pro. I mean, you would agree with that to an extent, right?
1,000%. Like, I'm always been a huge fan of European basketball, but when I was working in Chicago with Tim Grover, we had I think I talked to you about this, Wandale, the other night when we went out, about Henry Domasan, who was one of the best players in Europe. Well, he signed in Olympiacos in 06-07 when the Final Four was in Greece. He got almost $2 million. And he goes, Mike, they don't care. They signed like 5 guys for almost over all over $1 million. And he was like, Mike, they don't care if I score 20 or I score 6, as long as we win. And there are nights that I'm going to score like 15, and that's like scoring 30 over there, as you know. And then there's nights that I'm going to score 6, and they might applaud me more than my 6 than my 14 or 13 I would have. And I agree. I don't think it's all about winning over there. As long as you show up and you do it with grace and you fucking win games, that's all they care about. Especially those big ones, especially getting to the top 16, the Final Four. Like, that's all they give a fuck about, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
To me, that's why European basketball and playing out there was so much fun, is because you knew every single night you were just going to do whatever it took to win. And that is like, I mean, that's what I feel like I'm in it for. Like, and just playing to win is way more enjoyable, because whether or not you have a good or bad night, as long as your team wins, everything stings a little bit less. You know what I mean? So
you're not overthinking things like in a loss. Did I shoot too much? Did I not shoot enough? Was it because I missed those threes? When you win, you can have those same shots and decisions and mistakes, and you don't even second guess it. You're like, we won. Whatever. Who gives a shit, right? So take me through real quick, just to round off the NBL. Take me through, how did you deal with you were the marquee, you were the guy. How did you deal with that coming to a Melbourne United team who was already arguably somewhat a championship favourite the season before, or one of the championship favourites, at least top four, that now you've come into that squad. You're the man on that squad who had some success, and now, you're the billboard guy in the NBL, coming home, Australian, in the prime of your career of all times. How'd you deal with kind of that pressure on a daily basis?
I think I was pretty good at blocking it out, to be honest with you. I didn't really feel so much pressure around, you know what, man, I could almost say that, like, I felt more pressure around the undefeated comment than, my individual performances.
Hey, context. Jock made that comment and I picked him up on it. I sent him a text and said, so pro, just for context, he said he made a comment to the media saying, we're going to go undefeated, we're going to run the table. I saw that. I texted him. I said, hey, I saw your comment, man. There's no chance. He goes, yeah, we'll do it. And I said, all right, put your money where your mouth is. He goes, oh, no, I'm not betting on it. I said, oh, what? So you lied to the media then? You're lying out in public, right? And he's like, oh, fuck you.
Clickbait.
No, he bet it though.
Yeah,
He's a good man.
Shit.
Jock bet it, and I think it was $1,000, wasn't it? And he paid up on it. So, but yeah, that was one.
Honest to God, I truly believe that we had the talent base to go undefeated in that competition. At the time, I would say once I started actually playing in the NBL, I realized that there are a lot more reputable names around the league, and I realized that some of those fucking teams are tough as nails. So,
and you have to play in Perth with 3 referees who have tampons strapped on that are shitting themselves.
Referees, all of that. So no, that was a bit of fun. But honestly, like, for the betterment of my mental pressure in terms of my own performance, the fact that I put that out to the world at the start of the year, even after we lost that first game to Perth, I was like, well, I've said this about going undefeated, so now I have to win a championship, or otherwise this will just be a fucking balls up of a year. So at that point, that comment honestly took so much pressure off my own individual performance that I was like so focused and driven by winning that it probably did a lot of good for me personally. But I also feel like it did a lot of good for our team in that, we put a target on our back before season had even fucking started. And it was, for all of us, it was all about winning. I felt as though the intensity of practices were insane and through the roof. And, it was just so competitive the whole year round because we were just like, we got to fucking win this thing. Like, if we don't win this is like, people will laugh at us. So that really took a lot of pressure off my own individual performance in general. But at the same time, like, I understood that I had a role to play on that team, and I had to show up every night, or otherwise we would, some nights, we would probably struggle. So yeah, it was tough. It was, initially there was some angst about being that guy because, being who I am, I'm always like, fuck, like, am I really worth all this hype? Am I really the guy that everyone makes me out to be on court? Like, all of that stuff always runs through my head. And that's my insecurity as a basketball player, is I don't know if I'm, if I live up to the hype that people create around me. And it was no different going back to Melbourne. So to kind of go back there and get those games under my belt and really perform the way I did, even though I wasn't, I think Cam Luke or something said I was going to average 30 and 17 on the year. And I was just like, dude, like, that's fucked. Like, that's even harder. That's even harder to live up to than undefeated comment. So to kind of brush all that off, it was a good year, man. That was the best year I've ever had playing basketball. I loved it.
Yeah, I like the comments, even though I gave you shit about them, because it made you vulnerable. It made you and probably the squad uncomfortable, and I think you need that. I think it was an important thing to put pressure on yourself. And if everything's too cool for school because you're the most talented team, you a lot of times won't end up with the chocolates at the end. All right, so we're going to ask about the Olympics. Everyone will want to know. You guys had a phenomenal run there, a really, really good tournament. It was probably, you probably agree, and you can probably take us through the USA game a little bit better than I can just watching it. But essentially, I think a great tournament derailed essentially by 2 quarters, maybe 2 quarters and 2 minutes to be fair. And that's the brutalness of FIBA basketball and the brutalness of the Olympics. But where that segues is it didn't then capitulate into going into a bronze medal game saying, oh, we just lost to the US. So I guess take us through the USA game. And I've asked Brian Gorgon this question, and he gave me, details of his speech and like putting one on all of you guys' chins after the game. Take us through all that, because, before that USA game, it looked like it was going to be us in the US. Unfortunately, we drew them earlier than we wanted to. But take us through that bounce back of being down in the doldrums, the tears after the USA game, to then regrouping and obviously winning a bronze medal, the first medal in Australian basketball history.
Yeah, man, it was that was a crazy time. I would say, I would even cut back on that second half, man. I would say that we lost that game in those last 2 minutes of the first, because I feel
that's
like
what I'm saying. That's why I said the 2 minutes, because I said the same thing on commentary. I think it was we're up 11 or 13. And then they cut it to 5.
Yeah, that completely derailed us. And they came out and made some awesome adjustments and just weren't, like, at that point, we were getting a lot of things kind of downhill, back cuts to the rim, all of that stuff, because they were so focused on Paddy on the 3-point line. And then that second half, it felt like they were just pushing us uphill and making Paddy play one-on-one half the time. So, it was heartbreaking, man. Like, we really, really believed that we were gold medal material. And to this day, I still believe that team was, we got debunked by 2 minutes in that that semi-final, and to come back into the locker room and to have the characters in the room kind of just speaks to how, like, it speaks to the Australian way almost, that, we didn't let that game completely derail the whole thing. Like, we understood that whilst we were shooting for the stars, we had the opportunity to land on the moon. And that's kind of our whole mentality that was going into that bronze medal game is, hey, we're not going to fucking gold, but we have the opportunity to rose gold and come home with a medal for the first time ever. So Gorge coming in and making that speech, which, like, gives me chills right now.
Take us through it.
Man, I don't even, like, it was such a blur at that point, and you were just kind of like being pulled out of this dark pit that, like, majority of the words kind of in one ear out the other, but it was like you understood the message. And the message was like, I mean, the first thing you got to know is when Gorge gets on a roll, he fucking jumps from point A to C to Z to F to A to B to, like, so you've got to decrypt the message yourself. And sometimes, man, he would be talking about shit and I'll be like, what the fuck is this guy on about? But at the end of it, you're like, I get the message. So the message was, there's no fucking way that we're going home to our families again, being like, we fucking balls that up. Like, we have the opportunity to come home with a medal, and you best believe that we're going to bloody do it. So that was the whole message. And, that's a very short version of it. But he was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to look around this village and see the Australian basketball team, Boomers, walking around with their heads down when we still have an opportunity to win a bronze. And, from there it was just like, there was obviously still a little bit of a down moment and the bus was quiet on the way home. But as soon as we got back, everything picked up and it was back to business as usual. Like, how hard it is after a loss like that to get in an ice bath or go get a massage or something like that. Like, it's the last fucking thing you want to do, but everyone was just on board. And you could tell just by those little things and guys going and getting a big meal together and kind of having a laugh that we were good, and that it was kind of put to bed at that point. So there were some tactics that were kind of tweaked in that, in the next 36 hours or whatever it was, and I was so confident going into that game. But I will say, if I've ever been nervous for a game, that game was fucked. That walk to the court, I was like looking around and I was like, bro, I might pass out. Like, I've never been so shit scared in my entire life, and I don't know why, but I was thinking, you don't really think about the pressure ever, but at that point in time, I was like, dude, what happens if I miss a shot and, everyone in Australia blames, me for the loss? Or, like, I was so in my head and scared at that point in time. It was unbelievable. But, once you get on the court, all that stuff kind of gets put to bed and you're just playing basketball. But, man, that was a wild, wild time.
And then, obviously getting it done. You guys, basically from the jump, you could see Slovenia kind of hung on, tried to fight. They just didn't. They weren't deep enough. They weren't. Our bench was phenomenal as well. Everyone that played, just the speed we played with in that gorgeous system was beautiful to watch. Everything was pushing it right back at them. You guys didn't get your heads down when they scored on you. Luca made tough shots at times, but didn't shoot the best percentage. Turned it over a lot. But yeah, it was phenomenal, and you should be very proud about setting history. You were 12.8 points, 4.7 rebounds a night, which is very, very good numbers in Olympic Games in just over 21 minutes. So
appreciate that. Phenomenal.
And I assume the rest after that was pretty hard to remember, right?
Yeah, there's not much memory for a couple of days. Actually, there's the first night was just whatever went. I don't remember much of that night. The second night, I actually slowed down a little bit because I was just like, all right, like I didn't get out of bed until like 7 o'clock the following night. Like I was in all sorts. And then that night, you know, me and Josh Green and Duop were, you know, all the boys were hanging out, but we kind of was like, yo, I'm in so much pain. We backed off to the side a little bit. And then I thought it was all good and it was home stretch and I was going to meet India out in LA and we were going to have a good time. And then Paddy wouldn't fucking leave me alone the first day we got to LA and he was like, we're going out. There's no excuses, blah. So he was on like his 4th night in a row or something like that. And I was just trying to get a good night's sleep. And he would not leave me alone, bro. I got to the hotel, I lay down in my bed and I was like, fuck, finally, I can just relax and like embrace what's happened. FaceTime call. As soon as I hit the bed, man, Paddy Mills is like, righto, what are we doing? Let's go get us a few beers. And it was just all hands on deck again.
Yeah, no time, no rest for the wicked.
No chance. He's a machine, man. Him and Nelly. I've never seen anything like
Nelly.
it.
Yeah, Nelly's notorious for, he loves that. He loves getting amongst it. You then obviously have some negotiations. Any other teams before you signed with the Spurs, or was that kind of the only one that popped up, or were there a lot of people kicking the tires? Were you at that point? I guess that you signed. Did you sign right before the Olympics? Actually,
no. I signed
right
before the US game.
Okay. Yep. That's right. Yeah, it was during, right?
Yeah. There were conversations that had kind of trickled in from the last free agency period with 1 or 2 teams. But when we first got that offer, this is actually pretty funny. And my agent, Sammy Wojcinski, who's an Aussie bloke, will appreciate this. But when we first got that offer from San Antonio, he called me and he was like, hey, do you mind if you just get India and yourself on the phone? I just want to kind of run you through how this free agency period will work and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, just give me a bell tomorrow at like 9 a.m. At this point, free agency had already opened up. So I was like, fuck, there must not be anything on the table if he's calling me to talk about how it's going to work. So we jump on this FaceTime call and he's like, hey, all right, let's get to it and we'll kind of have a chat about this. I was like, yeah, what you got? And he was like, well, one thing I know is you're not going to be going overseas again this year. You've just had your first offer from the San Antonio Spurs. And I was like, you're fucking lying. Like that was my first reaction was, mate, there's no way. Like just shut up and tell me how this is really going to work. But he was serious and that was kind of how I found out about it with Inns on the phone. And at first we were like, all right, how about we just, actually, I'm not going to take ownership of this. He was like, I think that we should just like, you know, wait, fill it out, see what else is out on the market. And I was like, all right, you're the boss. Let's do it. And then I kind of hung up the phone and I suppose we'd both just like got off the phone and we were like, what the fuck are we talking about? This is the first real opportunity I've had to play in the NBA and our first reaction is, hey, let's wait. And so I called him right back like 20 minutes later and I was like, what the fuck are we doing? He was like, I have no idea. Let's sign the damn thing or let's agree to the damn thing. So we agreed straight away. But for a second there, we were like, should we wait and like feel out the market? And then we were like, what the hell? This is the Spurs. What are we thinking? So after that, we were just straight on the phone to Brian Wright and yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, you would have done a shrewded yourself, bro.
Yeah, no shit.
Especially an organisation that has, you know, ties to Australians. I think I'm sure that would have factored into your decision as well. There's some ties there, and yeah, I guess for you, just getting your foot in the door is the most important thing. I think fulfilling a lifelong dream for you, obviously, but then yeah, I think you made the right decision. I don't think you want to take that risk and that extra bit of stress, then potentially waiting for a call. Look, you haven't played a whole lot with the Spurs. You know, questionable. Like I can question it, you can't. You got to keep doing what you're doing. You know, there was an opportunity there where Pirtle went down. Aussies were firing up over here. Why didn't Jock play? You know, you had a good game in garbage time the night before. But talk us through just, you know, what you're going through professionally about just trying to stay ready when you just really don't know whether your number's going to be called. And if it is it garbage time? Is it legitimate minutes? And I guess just give everyone kind of your daily habits, knowing that you probably aren't going to play a whole lot of minutes. And if you do, then there's that whole other mindset of staying ready, staying engaged.
Yeah, I mean, the first things, you know, that comes to mind is, you know, you can't bottle up your frustration, like, and you know, that's not something to hide. Is that you're frustrated, but you've just got to know the right outlets to use. And you know, you two are the outlets that I use on a daily basis, and India is, and those are, you know, we're competitive individuals who obviously always want the best of ourselves in our career and we want to play as much as we can and all of that jazz. But, you know, those things kind of out of your control. So for me right now, it's just about, as you said, staying ready. And I was talking to Pro the other night at dinner, and you know, right now it really is, and the best advice he's given me is, or you know, both of you have given me really, is have a schedule and stick to it religiously no matter what. So for me, it's hour and a half before practice kicks off. I'm at the facility and you know, eating, doing some treatment, stretching, rolling, maybe some weights, a couple extra shots, and then I'm on court with the group, and just being religious about that time and time again, and understanding, thank God I've been through what I've been through in my career, that the battle of attrition and just rocking up every day and making sure I'm diligent and keeping to those things will pay off in the long run. So that's my mentality right now, man, is like, it really is out of my control. You know, these guys know what I bring to the table. Whether or not I get minutes on a given night is just not something that I can control. And luckily I've got India here, because she's been huge in just trying to take my mind off things. And we've really made a focus on trying to enjoy life off the court, because you realize that when you're in a situation like this where, you know, you've worked so hard to get here and you want to play and you feel as though you could be contributing on the team, it's important to not make this experience all about basketball, because when things like this happen, mentally you just go down the rabbit hole of, you know, it can get to a really dark place. So she's been awesome in making sure that, you know, we stay out of that as much as we can, and we really enjoy life off the court. We get out to Austin a fair bit and just, you know, try and do different things. So we took up paddleboarding for a little while there in the summer. It's cooled down a bit now, but you know, that was kind of our release, is to just make sure that I don't go crazy. But at the same time, like, you know, I've got to be ready to go, and you know, I get up more shots than I ever have in my career. You know, I'm working with a guy, Kelly Forbes, over at the Spurs, who, you know, Paddy put me onto. It was his guy here, and he's a game changer. We do staying late after practice doing stuff, extra conditioning after games, which is an absolute nightmare, but, you know, just constantly trying to improve. And you know, I linked up with a psychologist at the start of this experience with the Spurs, and she's been huge in, you know, trying to make a mindset shift from, all right, it's, you know, my happiness is all depicted with how many minutes I play, or me feeling successful is all about how many minutes I play. So I've kind of tried to move my mindset to more really specific goals, like body fat percentage, or, you know, how much I can lift in a weight room, or, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So trying to set goals that will kind of lead to the success and bring on minutes on the court is really important right now. And that's the stuff I'm trying to focus on now. I'm no bloody gem. I will still get, you know, a bit upset about the situation and whatnot, and have to, you know, get some stuff off my chest, but that's only because I'm human and I'm a competitor and I love winning. And, you know, that's all I really want to do in my career, is play meaningful minutes that depict whether or not our team wins or loses. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Nonetheless, I'm loving the experience, the hands-on work with, you know, the coaching staff, and, you know, being able to work on my body to this degree is something that I've never experienced before. And that's one of my favorite parts about the profession, is being able to get in the weight room and kind of, you know, try and work on that aspect of my life. So luckily I enjoy that, and you know, I'm able to have the resources to do all the extra work, because you know, that's saving me a bit at the minute.
Yeah, I guess my biggest regret looking back was exactly what you just said. I wish I enjoyed it more, man. But when you're in the bubble and you know, if I'm not ready for the next night, that guy's going to kick my ass, or if I had a good game, I better keep it at that level, or I don't want to get too up and down. I probably wish I enjoyed it more. So that's definitely a good message, Pro. You know, we talk about it all the time, Pro, but you know, with notorious veteran coaches, especially like a Popovich, even a Carlisle, it's going to be that rainy night in Indiana or Minnesota on a 5-game trip where all of a sudden you think you have no chance of playing. When what happens, Pro? You
get subbed in right out of that game. You know, you're down 19. You know, you're down like 15, middle of the end of the first quarter, or like 3 minutes to go in the first. They just throw you right in there, and you haven't played in a month, and you're like, what the fuck? And you're in, and that's why, Londo, you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're staying ready, man. You got to stay ready for all this stuff. This stuff is important, because nobody gives a fuck. Because if you're not ready, they're just gonna say, well, he's fucking not ready. So like the month we didn't play him, this is why we didn't play him. And regardless, now if he scored 20. Now it's like, we knew it, It just is what it is. And, you just got to stay ready because there's 50 guys in the league going through what you're going through, not given a chance yet, can produce if they're given minutes. And they just got to get those minutes. You could work out until you blue in the face. You can go in the D League and put up Jokic numbers, which you did last night. Congratulations. And you can do anytime. And you could do all this stuff. But if you don't get NBA minutes at some point, people aren't going to see that, and you're going to get them. You're that good. You will get them. It's just, you just got to wait. It's going to happen. But like Bogues said, it's going to happen some fucking rainy night. You're going to play fucking, Steph at one point, and, you guys are going to be down fucking 19 after the first time out, and he's going to be like, what the fuck? And he's going to throw you in the game, and it's going to be like, all right, now it's time to all this stuff you've been doing, all this, hey, I should be playing. Well, now you're going to have to earn it, and you're going to have to earn it, and you have to go in the game, and you got to figure some things out. Hey, you scored 5 the other night, you played a few minutes, and, it starts with that. You got to stay ready. I always tell young players, the head coach is the warden of the jail. You're trying to get out of the fucking jail. You got to do whatever that fucking warden needs you to do to get out of jail. And that's what it is. You gotta like, the minimum is, hey, I work hard and I have a schedule and I'm doing it. Everyone expects that. But now you have to just continue to make him happy every day and that coaching staff happy. That's why when we talked about getting there 90 minutes early, part of it is to get you prepared. Part of it is, he might roll through like 80 minutes before practice starts and there you are. Like, what's this jerk off doing here? What the fuck? Like, that's good. That's what you want. And that's what, like, when we started that in Dallas, the guys doing that was half the reason. It's a scam. Just make sure the coaches and the GM or whoever walks through that sees the guy there. And now what you do in those 90 minutes are very important, no doubt. But like, it's a mentality. It's a mindset. It's just, this is what we do every day, regardless. And I think once you get time, man, you'll be fine. It's just getting that time. And, it's being patient and not going nuts. A lot of players, like, they die on the vine because they go nuts. It's like being on a fucking island. It's like being Tom Hanks in Castaway. You end up fucking going nuts and talking to a volleyball, and that's it. And then when you're all fucked up because you're not playing, and then you get into a game and you're all fucked up, and you go 1 for 7, 4 turnovers, 8 blow-bys, and you're like, yep, told you he ain't ready. So you got to stay ready because no one gives a fuck if you're not ready.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're the only person right now that's president and CEO of Jock Landale Associates, LLC. You're the only guy throwing this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
And you've shown that, with the G League, you played last night, or the night before, I think it was last night, 26 and 8 in 29 minutes, 12 for 14 on the field. Your plus minus was insane. There's always an interesting psychology that I've noticed with the G League assignments is it can only go two ways. It can go horrifically bad or very, very well. And you've obviously gone on the very well side, but I've seen semi hyped up rookies get sent down there and think, I shouldn't be down here. This is bullshit. And they're probably right to an extent. And you probably don't deserve to be down there, to be honest. But while you're there, you might as well go and kick some ass and take names and prove that, hey, like, whoever sent me down here, don't send me down here again. So I think that's a very important mindset shift, and at least you're getting some run. You guys have that luxury of having, the Austin Spurs down the road as well, which is a good thing. But I guess finishing up from this, your obvious goal is obviously, establishing yourself in the NBA, playing minutes, playing a vital role, no doubt about that. But take us through some of your, I don't know if you do short, medium, long-term goals, but take us through, what are your goals right now? You're 26, in the midst of your career. Give me some of your goals.
Are you talking outside of the NBA, or are you talking just in general?
Either or, your world, man. I mean, I just know I do things small, medium, long generally. So small being like right now, week to week, month to month. Medium's probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and long terms, you're probably married your beautiful girlfriend and have kids by then, right? But
exactly,
that's kind of the mindset I'm going for.
She's nodding her head in the background right now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the short-term goal right now is just to carve out a spot that influences the wins and losses of a team. That is where my mind is fixated. I miss playing winning basketball. I miss playing on a team that, I miss playing for a team and being able to influence which way the game goes. So right now, my goal is to try and carve out a spot that does that, whether it be 10, 15, 7, 20 minutes, whatever it might be, that is my goal. The medium-term goal is to secure that second contract and really start to build a little bit of financial security for myself and my future family and all of that. And then I would just say that more of a long-term general goal is, I want to be a winner at all levels. I know how hard it is to do, but winning championships is honestly the top reason that I play this sport. And I would love to do that here, Europe. I've already done it in Australia, but I would love to go and have the opportunity to win a championship at all three levels. I would also love to finish my career back in Australia on home soil. And
Sydney Kings.
I will never turn my head on Melbourne again. That was a great year. I'm sorry, mate. I'm really sorry, but it's going to be Melbourne for life.
No, I don't say that. No, we're editing that shit out. No, don't say that.
You'll cut that out of the interview. My end and ultimate goal is to make the 32 Brisbane Olympics and retire right after that. That is the be all and end all that I've decided on. I decided on the day that Brisbane was announced. I want to make it to that Olympics, which I'll be 36 at, play that Olympics out, and I'll retire right after that.
36/37, you'll be, yeah. Oof.
That's the ultimate
stay
goal.
healthy. That's the main thing. That's a good goal, though. Home soil, Brisbane.
Yep.
Come to the games and watch you. I'll probably be in a wheelchair by then, but I'll definitely come to the games and watch you. Maybe Pro can fly out. We'll get him in the cargo.
I thought Landale's short-term goals was to count to 10 without fucking looking like he ate a popsicle too fast. But that's just me.
Oh, mate, you are fucking full of it.
I'm full of something.
All right, Jock. It wasn't too bad, man. We appreciate it. I think having people learn your story, I think you have a really good upbringing. I'm a big fan of yours. I know we talk shit a lot. It's always good to
absolutely
have fun, good sense of humor, laid back. But yeah, I mean, continue to do good things. I think the whole of Australia would agree with me. We're all waiting collectively for you to get an opportunity to show what you can do at the NBA level. That's not just some spot minutes. We all think that you're more than capable of playing 20 plus minutes in the NBA, and you shouldn't let anyone tell you otherwise, Pro. But thanks for joining us, Pro. You got anything else to party him with?
Nah, thanks for picking up a fucking check. It's about time an Aussie does that. So I appreciate that, man.
What did that check up to see you back, Jock? How many items did Pro? Was it the whole menu or just 3/4 of it?
It might have been like $500-600 at a fast food store, but I'm not 100% sure.
You got to go buffets with Pro. That's the secret.
That's the secret. Buy in bulk. Costco saw me coming. They closed their fucking doors, so we had to go next door.
All right, Jock. India in the background, thank you for joining us. Thank you for allowing Jock to spend some time with us and away from you. But we'll continue to watch your journey and wish you all the best.
Awesome. Cheers, fellas.
Later.